Americans for Prosperity North Dakota proudly supported important policy improvements that broke barriers for all North Dakotans this legislative session. From tackling unnecessary and burdensome occupational licensing standards to fighting for tax relief, AFP is proud to have played a part in improving the lives of North Dakotans this year. Join AFP today by visiting www.afpnd.org. This advertisement was paid for by Americans for Prosperity. North Dakota Insurance Commissioner Jon Godfread joins me now. John, hi. I was just watching some tweets about your campaign announcement, which you just, I imagine, completed minutes ago, and everybody talking about the tallest. Do you get tired of everybody talking about you being the tallest politician? Are you sick of that yet? And the reason I say that is because I'm a Yankees fan, and I've been watching the Yankees-Astros series, and in the postseason, it's like all the sports people want to talk about. Oh, Aaron Judge is super tall, right fielder for the Yankees. And Jose Altuve, second baseman for the Astros, is really short. And we go on and on about this. It's like, I get it. They're super tall. Can we move on?
No. I mean, I think it's something I've dealt with my entire life. I mean, I've been fortunate to be tall all the way through. I mean, I was head and shoulders above everybody in my kindergarten photo. So it's certainly something that I've become accustomed to and used to. And this world tallest politician stuff has been a lot of fun.
It's been fun. It has.
I didn't really know it was a thing, but it's been a lot of fun, and it's also an opportunity to again highlight what we do at the insurance department, because the reality is a lot of people don't know that the insurance department exists or that there's an insurance commissioner out there that can help. And so if this helps drive a little more awareness, that's an added bonus, and it's also a fun process.
Yeah, it's what does the insurance commissioner do exactly? And I guess, hey, let's make that our first serious question of the interview. Yeah. What have you done? What have you done over the last 4 years to commend you to re-election?
Well, I guess I'll start with what the insurance commissioner's role is primarily we're a consumer protection agency, so we're the agency that steps in between an insurance company and the consumer if there's an issue. And so consumers can call us and say, hey, my insurance company isn't treating me fairly, or hey, I don't think I'm getting reimbursed in this claim appropriately. Can you guys take a look? And then we can work with the insurance company on the back end to say, let's take a look, let's take a review, and see if we can come to some meaningful settlement. It's a really good service for our consumers because insurance is complex, and generally the minute you pick up the phone to call your insurance company, you're probably at a disadvantage because the reality is they deal with it on an everyday basis, and generally as a consumer, we don't deal with insurance until we need it. So even as an insurance commissioner, I don't sit around and think about my homeowner's insurance or my auto insurance on a daily basis, but if I get into an accident or have a hailstorm, I'm going to run to my policy to make sure it's there, and then have to get into a discussion with my insurance company, and that can be frustrating at times for consumers. And so they're able to turn that over to us, and we're able to advocate on their behalf with the companies and come to a fair settlement and make sure that those promises that our companies are making to our consumers are being upheld. And so that's our primary focus. But we also license all the insurance agents in the state. They've got to go through a testing process and a background check to be able to sell insurance in our state. And then we also license the companies. And so we've got to make sure that they're financially sound and able to pay for the promises that they're making. And so there's a lot of pieces to it, a lot of touches on it. But that's the point I wanted to make, too, is I don't think a lot of people, when we think about the insurance department, I think a lot of people think health insurance. I think even when you mentioned the term insurance, because health insurance has been such a policy bugaboo for a long time. I mean, just nationally, locally, it's health insurance is on a lot of people's mind, much more so, I think, than other, like auto insurance. I mean, generally, auto insurance is not the public policy problem. It seems like we got that squared. There's a thriving, competitive market. Most people are able to find insurance. I'm sure there's like any area of public policy, there's probably things we could do better. But for the most part, it seems like we have that figured it out, and it's working pretty well. Health insurance is not working very well, I think, but your office handles all of it, all types of insurance. We handle, and as a state-based regulator, we handle every line of insurance, and I like to say generally, except for health insurance to a little bit, and then flood insurance. Those are both have some pretty heavy federal involvement, and in my opinion, it's no coincidence that those are generally the areas we have the most disagreement and the most issues with. Every other line we've delegated to the states to effectively manage and regulate and run. Why we can't get that with the healthcare or health insurance or even flood insurance that's again an ongoing discussion we're having with Congress about turning some more of that control back over to the state to allow us to make decisions for our consumers. But again, that's an ongoing discussion. But you're absolutely right. Right now, health insurance is the main driver of the discussion when you talk about insurance. That may not always be that way. I think with autonomous vehicles coming forward and how we're going to insure vehicles when they become autonomous, whether that's 10, 15, 20 years down the road, I think that'll be a pretty heavy transition and a pretty interesting discussion along the way. But certainly in the last decade and probably even longer, health insurance has been the top billing when we talk insurance.
It's funny to even talk about that stuff. I'm watching these YouTube videos out of California where people are like falling asleep in their Tesla because it's here. Like Teslas have, you get on the highway, your Tesla can drive itself. And it's a problem in California where people are like falling asleep on their commute, where other people are filming them and they're sleeping behind the wheel and their car's driving them down the highway.
I've had the opportunity to go out to California and be on the Google campus and kind of look at some of their autonomous vehicle stuff. I'll tell you, they're further along than I thought they'd be, and I thought they'd be pretty far along. But there's one thing that's kind of saving grace for us here in North Dakota at this point is they have no idea how to deal with snow. And so it completely screws up their sensors, and they don't know what to do with the heavy snowfall. Yeah. But I also agree. I also say, as far as autonomous vehicles goes, I would like to be able to be the first one that has an autonomous vehicle, because I would love to turn over that responsibility, because about 90% of the crashes that happen are due to human error. Yeah. And so if we can figure out a way to safely implement this autonomous vehicle concept, it not only could save lives, but I think it also changes our whole automotive industry, which it'll change how cars look. It'll change. We may not even have car ownership. It'll just be more of a fleet model where I'll just type in my phone, say I need a ride to work, and a car will show up. Yeah. Which then I can turn my garage into a man cave and put a big screen TV in there and have a great time.
You were putting the cart in front of the horse, my friend. I think you're a little far ahead of yourself. Although I may need to talk to your wife about how badly you want this man cave. If this is how far. Just give him a man cave. It's funny but that has implications for insurance, because you don't even think about that. Yep. If I'm not driving, right? Like if my car manufacturer has essentially taken over and their artificial intelligence or programming or whatever the heck it is taken over driving, am I still liable? Yeah. Like if it gets into an accident.
That's the question, right? If two autonomous vehicles hit each other, who's at fault? And so I think that's where that discussion and that whole the way our auto insurance is currently sold and currently marketed and attached to the drivers and the cars is going to be completely different, because I think it's going to go, if you ask me to look at my crystal ball, I think it's going to go to more of a fleet model. Now that'll certainly impact the urban areas much quicker. Like in Singapore, they do it right now where you can drive to the outskirts of the Singapore, the main urban area. And at that point, then it's all autonomous vehicles on the inside. And so you've got to park your car at a park and go place, and then you hop in the car and go wherever you need to go. That's probably the transition we'll be looking at. But we may get to a point eventually again where automobile ownership will be different. We'll still have the guys who are the kind of the gearheads and want to own those classic cars and all that stuff going forward. But how those are insured may be very, very different. And so like I said, I think as of right now, certainly, and probably for the foreseeable future, health insurance is a big talking point. But we've got a lot of other areas with this new technology that's coming forward in the insurance industry that will, I think, it's going to elevate the insurance industry to probably some pretty interesting discussions.
Let's talk about your first term in office. Sure. You were elected in 2016, so of course you're up for re-election now here in 2020, or the 2020 cycle, I should say. What have you accomplished during your first 4 years?
So the first thing I really wanted to do when I got into office was to try to elevate the awareness, the public's awareness of that this office exists. I learned pretty quickly on the campaign trail last time that there aren't a whole lot of people that understand just what services the insurance department provides. And so we've done a concerted effort on trying to do more outreach and just being more a part of the public discussion on insurance, on health insurance, on all of the different lines of insurance. It's something that we still need to continue to work on, and we still need to grow. But I'm proud of that work that we've moved there. I'm also happy with the reinsurance program we just passed this last session, which provides about a 20% reduction for folks on the individual market who've got to go out and purchase their own health insurance, that 20% reduction is critical. And so that's generally for those farmers, those ranchers, those small business owners who don't have access to a large group market. They're finally getting some relief because they've been taking the brunt of the year-over-year rate increases from the ACA, and they don't receive a subsidy. They don't receive any kind of assistance. And so the ability to be able to bring in some relief for them, I think, is critical. It'll help keep them insured, and it'll help keep that tough discussion that I know some of our farmers are having is, boy, I don't know if I can afford health insurance this year, or we got to sell X number of head of cattle to pay for our health insurance. Or the scariest point is, you know what, nobody got sick last year. Let's just not have it and see how it goes. That's a very dangerous game to play, in my opinion. And so, working with the state legislature and their support, we've been able to provide some relief for those individuals, which I think is very impactful.
Well, I want to drill down on this a little bit because I think this is a big deal, especially now. I mean, it's nobody could. I mean, the agriculture markets are what they are. North Dakota's an agriculture state. We understand the commodities roller coaster. The weather has not cooperated with us, and then we have some national politics involved with China and all that. So it's been a rough year, and it's going to be a rough fall and a rough winter for our farmers, and probably a tough spring too. Right now, since most of them are on the individual market, I think that's a safe thing to say. They a 20% reduction in their costs is a big deal. So how did you do that? I mean, I know you said the legislature. What was the mechanism that allowed insurers to lower their rates that far?
So it's a reinsurance program, and reinsurance is been around as long as insurance has been around. It's basically insurance for insurance companies, and so what that does is it helps us take out some of the outliers. So the folks who maybe have a very medically complicated year or a high claims cost year, it helps them. It provides some relief for our companies for them. So as you can imagine, as you're building a rate, if you got a couple outliers who have all of a sudden a $4 million claims year, that impacts the rest of the market. And what we found with our study is that about 0.24% of North Dakotans would fall into the reinsurance attachment point, essentially, so within the reinsurance program. So it's a very, very small percentage of North Dakotans who have those high claims cost year. But as you can see with the program that we implemented, it has a very big impact on the rates. And that's something we've kind of always anecdotally known, that there's a small number of people who have a medically complicated year or have a high claims cost year, and that drives the rates for the rest of us. And so if we can kind of take those peaks out of the marketplace and provide some more assistance there, it can dramatically bring down the rates for everybody else. And so this program is through the ACA. It's one of they call it a state innovation waiver that you can get. I don't necessarily agree with that term because there's really no innovation in it. There's no flexibility offered by the federal government to do anything kind of creative. But we did a study on what this would do for North Dakota. Brought that forward to the legislature, and they supported it and brought it forward, and now we're seeing the fruits of that legislative session coming in this next 2020 plan year. When we just released the rates on October 1st, we showed that 20% reduction on the individual marketplace, which will have a great deal of impact for, again, our farmers, ranchers, and small business owners. For people listening to this wondering, well, when am I going to see that? When is that going to show up in their bill? So it'll show up when they go shopping for their plan for the 2020 plan year that goes into effect January 1 of 2020. Certainly encourage everybody to go out and look and shop for these different plans because the plans are somewhat the same between the carriers, but the prices will be a little bit different. So it's important to go out and see what your options you have available. And that generally I encourage folks to go through a licensed insurance agent to do that. You can also go on healthcare.gov to get those price quotes. But as a consumer, nothing has to be done on the consumer side. It's all done on the back end between the insurance companies and the insurance department. So the only thing a consumer should see is that reduced rate starting effective January 1, 2020.
A lot of people don't shop for insurance that way. People shop for auto insurance that way. It seems like every few years I go, looking around to see if I can get a better rate. I usually stay right where I'm at, but I like to look around, just see if I can save some money. Most people don't do that. Most people have my health insurance is through my employer, not shopping around because I'm not probably going to find anything better on the individual market than that. Do you think that's a problem where most people don't shop around? I mean, I think it's common in North Dakota because of the realities. We have a lot of self-employed people here. Agriculture, is a big part of that. We have a lot of entrepreneurs in North Dakota, so a lot of people are shopping for their own insurance, but that's not typical. Most people aren't. As a matter of fact, most North Dakotans, even in a state like ours, most North Dakotans are not in the individual marketplace. Should that change?
About 8% of us are on the individual market, so 8% of North Dakotans actually have to go out and shop for that insurance. So you're absolutely right. It's a small number of folks who've got to go out and actually have that discussion and shop. But I think it's an important piece for them to go out and do that. Should that change? Should that structure change? Should the insurance be tied to your employer and all those discussions? I'm not really sure how we change that at this point. But what I would like to see is more engagement by our consumers. Whether that's through an HSA, an FSA, or some of these different health savings accounts that we can have, that puts the consumer's money back in their pocket, and it also gives them the ability to have that discussion with their provider. Because as I'm spending my own money, it'll be, do I really need this test? Or is there a cheaper way to go about doing this? Or is this necessary? And having that discussion at the provider level, I think, is something that we're kind of missing in this country. And so the more control we can give back to consumers to have that discussion with their doctors and their providers, I think that helps put the downward pressure on our healthcare costs. But the problem with that is, I think people have gotten so used to the current format that they've got, the current way that they go about it. I couldn't tell you half the time what an office visit would cost if I went to the doctor. And I get the EOB and I can look through it and I can navigate and figure that out. But the average North Dakotan probably isn't going into that detail and looking at that. They're just going to the doctor, paying their $30 copay or $40 copay or whatever their copay is, and just moving forward. That's a big problem in my opinion in the system, is that our consumers don't know what it costs to receive that health care. And ultimately that healthcare cost, what it's costing to receive those services, is driving our health insurance rates, because the underlying thing we're doing is going up at a dramatic rate. So is our health insurance. And so I think the ACA puts the target squarely on the back of the insurance companies. And I think you're seeing even now with the Trump administration and even a study we're doing here in North Dakota that the focus is somewhat shifting now to the providers to have that discussion about, okay, why does it cost so much to receive health care in this country? And there could be very valid reasons, but we've got to unpack that and we've got to take a look at that. And is there areas that we can either get more collaboration or some policy changes that can lighten that burden? Because if the cost of healthcare is going to continue to go up, so is our health insurance.
Well, I think you're right. I would rather, it always chills me a little bit, the idea of the government coming in and asking, why are you charging so much? It's not up for the government to fix. I don't think the government should be fixing the price of a CAT scan any more than they should be fixing the price of bread. It should just be what it is. And,
absolutely.
And the marketplace can sort those things out. I think the problem is the marketplace is distorted, and wherever we see that, we see prices spiral out of control. We could go down a path here and talk about college tuition rates. We've gone through the roof. What's enabled that? Well, there's a little bit of a disconnect between the cost of attending higher education. We've essentially turned getting a college loan into an entitlement in this country, and that's caused problems. But anyway, I'm digressing. So, there's some real accomplishments here, though. I'm looking at your press release for your campaign. You talked about raising the stature of your office. You're talking about lowering premiums for North Dakotans, and you've done that. And along the way, you also cut your office's budget, the Insurance Commission's budget, by 7.5%. What did you do there?
So what we did is we came in, and I'll give some credit to Governor Burgum, and he challenged every agency to come in and say, okay, give us a 90% budget, and what does that mean? So that gave us an opportunity to take a look at what we do as the insurance department, and our job is consumer protection and insurance industry regulation. We had some other pieces, whether it's inspecting boilers or running an underground petroleum tank storage fund, or frankly even selling insurance that I didn't feel really fit with our mission. And so we're able to bring some discussion forward to the legislature to say, the boiler inspections probably fit better with the Department of Environmental Quality. They're a public safety agency. That's what they do. Maybe they should go over there. The Underground Petroleum Tank Fund is generally managed by the DEQ. We oversee the fund, and we end up making the payments out of that fund, but it probably makes more sense to move that over to DEQ. And then the last one is probably the thing I'm the most proud of, is that since state inception, we've had the State Fire and Tornado Fund and our State Bonding Fund. These are essentially government insurance, and so it's where state government goes to get insurance. that was being run through the insurance department for the last 100+ years. We asked the question of, does it make sense as a regulator that we're also selling insurance? And it's to me, it's been a very unhealthy relationship. It's a tenuous area, right? And so we partnered with the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund, who is it's a quasi-private entity. It's a private entity run by nonprofits who they provide insurance to all the other political subdivisions except for the state, and said, why can't you do the same service for the state? And they said, well, it's in a law that we are barred from offering this. And so we changed that law, turned that over, and the DIRF uses private agents in the private market to sell this insurance. So it was an opportunity for us to get out of the way and frankly turn this back over to the private market, which makes a heck of a lot more sense, and it's going to be better service, there's going to be better coverage for our government entities, and without having being run by the regulator. Because the reality is the only people that audit us are the auditor. And and when we go and inspect and examine insurance companies, we take a different look at it. And so we audit and examine North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund just like we do every other company. And so now this fund will be underneath that kind of umbrella, and we'll be able to take a good hard look at it and make sure we're doing it right and providing the best coverage and the best service we can for our government entities. Because the reality is, whether I'm a government entity or a private individual, I really want my insurance agent to be my insurance agent. And through the use of the North Dakota Insurance Reserve Fund, we're putting the professionals back into that conversation. The private agents are going to get back into that discussion and be able to have that discussion with our government entities to ensure that we're properly protected.
Last question. You're obviously campaigning for another 4 years. What do you want to do with those 4 years? I mean, looking ahead, what do you still want to tackle?
Well, we still haven't solved the air ambulance issue. That's a big piece for me that I think is a very there's a common sense solution that sits out there that is sitting before Congress right now, that they could pass the Lower Healthcare Costs Act and solve this problem. We tried to do that here in North Dakota in 2017. We're in the middle of a lawsuit to kind of uphold that law. For those who aren't, the air ambulance issue is essentially where if you and especially in a rural state like North Dakota, I mean, we got a lot of people who live a long way from services like hospitals. So if you have, you get in a car accident or you have some sort of a health emergency, they'll send in a helicopter to come get you. But the cost of that can be ruinous. I mean, tens of thousands of dollars, and it's not necessarily covered by your insurance. In fact, is it covered by any insurance policy? I guess I don't know. So we've got nine air ambulance companies that provide service in our state. About 6 of those have got great relationships with our insurance companies, are in network, and there is no balance billing that comes from that. We've got 3 what I like to consider probably kind of bad actors that actively are kind of willfully out of network because they use this balance billing method as a business model. So essentially, as a consumer, if I'm laying by the side of the road because of an accident, dispatch and EMT are calling an air ambulance because I need that life-saving service. You're not shopping around air ambulance companies at that point. I'm not even probably conscious when this decision's being made. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I've got an $80,000 balance bill on the back end of a pretty significant health crisis that needed an air ambulance ride. You can certainly see how that leads to financial ruin, and that is completely unfair to our consumers because, again, it's not a decision that they're making. And so we've got to figure that out, and I think we have the solution here in North Dakota in 2017, but we got overturned in our district court by a federal Airline Deregulation Act, which is we can kind of get into some legal arguments there if you really want to, but the long and the short of it is we still got to solve that problem. We still got to fix that. And so that's one area we're going to continue to work on. I also think, obviously, the healthcare discussion will continue and what healthcare reform maybe comes forward, how it looks like, and what, if anything, changes with the next election cycle. But lastly, I think the growth of technology and how our consumers are interacting with insurance is going to change over the next 5 to 10 years pretty dramatically. And as much, I think, as everybody wants the technology to come forward and really interact with this industry, as the insurance commissioner, everything's going to be great until it's not. And so we're doing our best to stay on the front end of this and make sure we're asking those questions to ensure that consumer protection remains, even with the growth of artificial intelligence, even with the growth of the use of blockchain and some of this stuff. And so I think it's a really fascinating time to be a part of the industry because we're at the cusp of a pretty big technology shift here. I think the financial services industry went through that. Now we can do online checking, online banking, and all that stuff. The insurance industry is just kind of at the forefront, at the beginning of that big big transition, and it's a great time to be a part of it. And frankly, I've been able to kind of move into some leadership roles on the national level by the chair of the Innovation Technology and Task Force and the Artificial Intelligence Working Group for our national association. So it's fun to have a front row seat at this technology growth and this change because I think it's going to have a pretty big impact on our consumers going forward.
Jon, thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. Anytime.